Hello and welcome to Ulgi's Tavern. On today's video we will talk about the rise of Kragnos, also known as the end of empires. His story is an old story. His story is one that is much older than Sigmar's reign in the Age of Myth. It was a time before any known race today was at its peak, as it is shown in the book. During the primordial dawn of Gur, the land was governed not by humans, elves or dwarves, not even by greenskins, but by the strange hybrid creatures that were as much animals as sentient men. Many of these were the spawn of the primordial essence of chaos, known as the Beastmen. They claim to this day to be the true inheritors of the mortal realms. Now, here we see that the Beastmen are a true ancient race, who maybe this little line right here gives credence to the theory of the corporeus chaotica postulate, which says that the Beastmen came from an ancient civilization that did not follow the natural order and were somehow either reproducing with other species or mixing with other species, and this gave birth to a creature born from chaos as opposed to order. So they were born from the essence of chaos. Basically, that's why they're born with different parts everywhere and whatnot. It's not a natural thing, the Beastmen. So maybe this little line right here does give credence to that theory right there. And so the text continues. There were also races whose existence was pure and free from any unnatural taint. Standing tall amongst them were the Drokus of the nation of Dawns, massive centaurian creatures that could trample even an ogre into the dirt without breaking a stride. Native to the Gurish heartlands, the Drogoth were creatures of earth and wilderness governed by a long and proud history. Here we learn that the race that Kragnos belongs to is called the Drogoth, and that they were an order alliance kind of race that if they had continued to today's timeline, they would have followed the order alliance. They were so entwined with the land that they only took what they needed. In fact, they were the exact opposite to what Kragnos would later come to be known as. And what could have ended up breaking Kragnos? Nobody knows, since his story is so old and was never written down, and was only passed down by oral traditions or cave painting. And with that, through the eons, the story changed, and even during his time, his story was exaggerated. But we do know little things here and there about Kragnos. We know he was born to a ruling class of the nation of Dawns. He was the son of the tribal elder Gorgos. But in time, Kragnos did not want to follow his nation's way. He wanted more. He wanted to take more. And he had a really short temper, as we are told. He had a simmering temper, and after being scolded for beating his brother to a pulp over the right to court the same mare, he decided to strike out with his closest companions. And so he went out and started to become a menace to the ancient nomadic human tribes of the time, and they lived in fear of him, since they knew if they saw Kragnos, it meant sure death to them. Because at the time, there was no Sigmar, and obviously no Sigmar means no Stormcast. But to the greenskins of the time, who had more in common with the bone splitters that we know today, they saw greatness. They saw Kragnos as a great leader of destruction, and they called him the Boss Trampler. And so the tales of Kragnos between the greenskins were told, and by each passing story it became more and more elaborate and more exaggerated, as stories and rumors tend to do in real life. And this gave rise to the legendary Kragnos amongst them. As the legends surrounding the giant warrior grew more impressive, he too grew in stature and power. Stories sprang up of how he tumbled the walls of Ur-Harasho through the sheer anger, how he shattered the Bjornsodden's coast to form its endless ice flows, and how he clawed up the ancient heart of a rock from the largest geomantic nexus of Gur, so as to forge it into the head of his fell weapon, the Dread Mace. It was also said that Kragnos had retrieved the disc of the shield inviolate from a deep gouge in Gur's crust. Gorka Morka had thrown it there in disgust, having tasted its purity as a man would a coin of gold, and chipped his tooth, and from the twin-headed god's blooded saliva, the great bronze shield had inherited the ability to eat magic. And so, as his tail grew mightier and mightier, the ancient greenskin started to view Kragnos as a god, and so began to bring him offerings. These offerings were the bones of monsters they slew, believing that this worthy gift held inside the marrow the bestial spirit of Gur itself, and as well as being given the amber bone, this realm's version of ramstones, as a tribute. And Kragnos, being the ever-wanting creature that he is, he would gladly eat and drain the bones and its juices. This gave rise to the self-fulfilling prophecy, and in time Kragnos began to absorb the energy held within and began to show more and more power, and began to grow in size as well. He would find out that he enjoyed being revered by the greenskins because they would chant his name and they would follow him everywhere, and Kragnos tolerated them. Soon Kragnos, because he had destroyed several barbarian nations and his kins were so happy he was bringing stability to the region, and would soon give him the nickname the End of Empires. For the many nations he had destroyed, and amongst the greenskins he would become to known as the god of earthquakes. After a battle he had, it was said that his power opened a fissure and swallowed barbarians whole. As his powers grew, he gained more territory and was now expanding. He wanted to have the entire realm of Gur under his thumb, but one last race was strong enough to oppose the wrath of Kragnos, and it was the Draconith. The Draconith were a race of scaled dragon-like sorcerers. They did not have a formal alliance, but they did have a non-aggression pact. Since when Kragnos was young, he fought alongside them against the dragon ogres of the time, as well of another war against another race, but that will be a little bit later. And they knew that the both races were strong enough to destroy one another, so they had some sort of cold war amongst them until Kragnos came into power. But also helping the pact was the fact that they had a mutual enemy in a race that was not a native to Gur, but would say that they are the rightful lords of Thondia, and they were known as the Shaggoth. And so during Kragnos' youth, the event of the War of the 13 Peaks took place, where the alliance of Drogoth and Draconith came victorious and almost exterminated the Shaggoth, which is pretty crazy out of them. Now, in the rule of Kragnos, the uneasy pact they had formed was broken, and a new war came to pass between the Drogoth and the Draconith. And what Kragnos' father feared came to pass, and the war ended with both sides being near extinct. And Kragnos was furious and began to harbor an intense hatred to dragonkind, and began to hunt them down, and also destroying their eggs every time he would find them, and kill anything that looked like a dragon. It was the last living drakes of Vexothkol, sorry I don't know how to pronounce that were to finally halt his vengeful onslaught by calling out to the stars to an ancient race from another time and another world. The ancient race known today as the Seraphon, or the Lizardmen if you're from Warhammer Fantasy. And Lord Croak himself responded to the cry of help, and together they came up with a plan to imprison Kragnos. So this is one reason why we have the new motto from this book, is because Lord Croak came into play, and this is one of the few times that he decides to actually help out. And in the battle of the Twin Horde Peaks, which ended with many losses for the Seraphon and the Drake Lords, but that was to be expected. that was part of the great plan, and we all know that Lord Krog does not care about the lives. He cares only about the end plan because he sees the big picture. So he did not really care about how many Seraphon ended in that died, or Mage Priest died in that battle. All that's important is the great plan. And in fact, the peak that the battle was taking place was not a normal peak, but a prison made from a hollow granite horn of some colossal, long dead creature. Long ago it was dead, so it's just petrified, a fossil basically. And here we have an appearance by Dracothian himself, as he helps the Mage Priest and the Drake Lords hold Kragnos down and imprison him beneath magical granite as it is described. But first, it is pretty amazing that Draconid made an appearance, which is pretty rare, and it does tie into the fact that, the Seraphon do have this mystical connection with a Dracothian himself. Kragnos was lowered downward into the oiling sphere of energies that had gathered in the gullet of the mountain's opening maw. Around him, hovering a dozen mage priests like moons orbiting a realm sphere, each borne upon a palanquin of gold as they concentrated their immense arcane might on holding Kragnos fast for a few vital moments. The mountain, split by Kragnos' own destructive aura, as much as the warring arcane powers around the peak, closed once more. In doing so, it buried not only Kragnos but many of his assailants alive, a sacrifice deemed necessary by Mage Priest, Drake Lord, and God Beast alike, for it entombed Kragnos in a hollow core of timelessness beneath hundreds of feet of granite. The spell of entrapment was woven of time itself and could not be damaged by mace, nor by might, nor by sheer outrage. Kragnos had been removed from the cosmic pastry entirely by the magic of the great Drake and his allies. And so, Kragnos, the end of empires, and the god of earthquake as he's known by the Greenskins, was imprisoned for eons and was soon forgotten and turned into a mere legend, but with the actions of Alario which freed him from his prison. But that is a story I will continue on my next video. Now, for this part of the story, it is just fascinating how much we got to learn from Kragnos and how he really played a vital role in the ancient Greenskins' lives, and how he basically was the one that created the Gurlands as we know today, since his stomping and everything was just destroying everything, creating the mesas and stuff like that, and which will play a vital role in what's to come in 3rd edition as well. Since we do have the rise of the new kind of Oryx in the race, and it does take place in Gur, so that's also a huge part of it. Also, we get a little nod at the Dragon Ogres, which is really cool. Maybe we'll get an updated version of them when Beastmen finally do get their updated and upgraded models. And this also shows how much Kragnos hates them, and how he really hates Beastmen, and I wonder how he's gonna react when he sees both the modern day Beastmen and as well as the Seraphon, who are actually more prevalent in the realms, since during his time they were more of a star faring race, and now they're actually having, Seraphon on the ground. They're actually making colonies, they're actually making cities once more, and some of them are not even like Lord Krog's imagination anymore, they're actual physical beings. So I wonder how he's gonna react when he sees all of that, and how it's going to be like how he's gonna react at the fact that it was actually them who imprisoned them, since the Draconids don't really exist anymore, at least that we know of. So it's basically left is the Seraphon. And so yeah, it was a really great piece of lore that we got here. So let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. Do you guys like this? I'm trying trying this version of telling the story. But hopefully you liked it. Did you go ahead and let me know if you liked how they introduced Kragnos in Broken Realms Kragnos? Do you like his lore? Do you like how they're actually entwining him with the current lore and what's to come? So do you also like the fact that finally Destruction is getting some well-deserved love, and how this actually increases the mythos, the lore of, the greenskins? So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and remember, not everything is what it seems in the realm of Ulgu.